Are you about 12678 South?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm just below the golf course where the bridge, there's a bridge for the pathway that you can cross to go up to the golf course. There's like two big piles of blood, and there's splatter blood all over the bridge, and then right along the edge of the water, there's like a red kid shoe in there. It could have just floated in, but I figured I better call you guys.
What you just heard was a frantic call to 911 that led to the haunting discovery of a crime that took place at the Jordan River. A jogger nearby had reported the presence of blood and a missing shoe near the river. As the investigators examined the scene and sent samples for blood analysis, a cold truth hit harder than any of them expected. The blood was not from any animal. It was human. The discovery had shifted the investigation into far darker territory. While searching for the unknown, the officers at first couldn't find any trail that would lead them to the answers to this twisted case. Then, after a search operation that went on for hours, they found a lifeless body floating in the cold water on the other side of the river. What made this case more insane was not just the suspect, but another person who exploited this tragic incident to frame someone for murder as an act of revenge. The detectives were tricked into following the trail of lies set by this woman, who claimed to be the witness of the incident.
Wham! Outside the side of her face, and she got balled into the wall. You stupid! Call them and tell them to get the fuck over here. You get your ass over here and bring me some change of clothes. And blood everywhere, all over the place.
On March 11, 2012, the floating body was identified as the 15-year-old Annie Kasprzak. Swollen due to being in the water for hours, the lifeless girl was wearing a red shoe that matched the one discovered earlier on the opposite side of the river, along with blood splatters on the rocks. When her body was finally pulled from the water, her face was unrecognizable due to the brutal assault she had been put through. With clear signs of severe fractures on the skull, injuries on the forehead, and signs of trauma on the body, the autopsy report confirmed multiple blunt force injuries to the skull as the cause of her death. Her skull was butchered from every angle, and her brain was left hemorrhaged and bruised all over. Her killer had beaten her so violently that her face had been separated from the skin and her teeth were left loose. The brutality of the attack was such that survival, even with immediate medical attention, would have been impossible for Annie. The police soon held a press conference, hoping to find new leads to solve the case. It wasn't long before the broadcast reached Annie Kasprzak's parents, who had desperately reported her as a runaway. On the evening of March 10, 2012, 15-year-old Annie Grace Kasprzak stayed home to babysit her brothers, while her foster parents, Veronica Kasprzak and James Bratcher, went out for dinner. When they returned, Veronica noticed that Annie had changed from shorts into jeans, thinking it might have been due to a drop in temperature. As Veronica headed to take a shower to soothe her headache and Annie went back to chill in her room, nothing seemed abnormal about a very normal weekend, but little did they know their peaceful evening was about to take a dark turn. As soon as her mother was out of the bathroom, she and her husband were struck with the chilling reality that their daughter was to be found nowhere in the house. While looking through her stuff, Annie's stepfather, James Bratcher, found an apology note, written in her handwriting, kept hidden under the blanket, which read, "I'm sorry, Mom, I made a mistake. Please don't try to look for me because I don't want to be found." The note mentioned, "I'll be on my way to California. I told my friends I was P, but I only wanted their sympathy. That's why I lied." The shock was a small word for what her parents felt, as they wasted no time in contacting authorities to begin their search for Annie. So later, when the mother heard in the news about the description of the 15-year-old girl who had been found dead, her world was turned upside down. Desperate for any hope about her missing daughter, Veronica contacted Annie's boyfriend, Christopher Bagshaw. Christopher did his best to avoid raising any suspicions, acting as if he had no idea about Annie's plans to run away. As Veronica was giving out information to the police to start the hunt for her runaway daughter, the officer's inquiry about whether Annie wore braces sent shivers down her spine. The worst fears of Annie's parents were confirmed when the DNA results matched the dead body found. The horrifying truth shattered their hopes that Annie had just run away. They were now hunting for her murderer. After officially confirming Annie's death, The police visited her home to gather more information that could lead to her killer. Annie's note and her decision to run away were all very crucial details related to the mystery of this case. The police wanted to know the factors that led Annie to take the extreme step of running away from her home. Childhood plays a great part in shaping a person's future personality. It influences how individuals manage emotions and deal with challenges in adulthood. These early years weren't easy on Annie Kasprzak, who spent much of her childhood bouncing between foster homes and child service centers. Annie thought she had finally found her home when Veronica became her case manager at Child Services. Veronica and her then-husband, Dennis Casper, were soon drawn to the young girl and decided to adopt her. Life started to feel better for Annie as she received love and protection from her new family, but she couldn't cope when Veronica and Dennis decided to separate their ways. A rebellious side, along with the usual teenage issues, began to take over Annie, who had been deprived of love her entire life. Despite the drastic change in her foster parents' lives, Annie was treated well with care and love. Soon after, she met Christopher Bagshaw, who was around her age. The teenage couple began dating, thinking they were in love. 15-year-old Annie dreamt of running away with Chris in the hopes of building a perfect life together. Her close friends later revealed that Annie had shared the news of her pregnancy with them and also shared her plan to run away with Chris. As investigators looked through her journals and computer history, they noticed that Annie was obsessed with her boyfriend. Her tote bag was packed with papers, many of which were filled with thoughts about how much she liked Chris. One journal entry written after they met on May 8, 2011 read, "There's a kid in my math class I really like." As investigators dug deeper into Annie's life and spoke with her friends, they found one topic of discussion common: Annie being pregnant with Christopher's child. But what came as a puzzling mystery was the autopsy report that revealed Annie wasn't pregnant. Nobody knew why Annie was deliberately spreading this false rumor about herself. Many people, including her mother, thought that this was a sign of her desire to have a forever happily after with Chris. All the clues and unanswered questions were pointing towards Christopher Bagshaw. Since Annie was super close to him, investigators knew they had to question him to uncover the truth. Was her murder linked to her running away from the house, or had she fallen victim to an unknown predator by the river? Christopher was called up for custodial interrogation. As per the laws for minors in the state of Utah, he was accompanied by his father in the interrogation room. By the confidence in his speaking tone, Chris appeared open to the questions the officer was asking him.
Tell me the last time that you saw Annie.
Wednesday or Thursday of last week.
Do you remember what time?
I don't. I know that it was after school, and she had to go home around 6.
Okay. When's the last time you spoke with her?
The night of Saturday.
Do you remember what time that was?
Around 8.
How many times did you talk to her that night?
I talked to her twice, but she called me 4 times.
How long do you think your conversations were with her?
5 or 6 minutes.
5 or 6 minutes each, or?
Well, yeah, each.
What did you guys talk about?
She asked me to run away with her, and I tried to convince her not to, and I told her that was a stupid idea, and to think about her family.
Tell me about what kind of rumors were out there about you and Annie.
The rumors said that I got her pregnant, but I didn't.
When did you find out? Or when did she start telling you that?
That what?
That she was pregnant with your baby?
She didn't start telling me, she started telling everybody else. Around a month after, she had had with LJ.
Annie's journal mentions a person named LJ. This new name would later help solve the case. Christopher claimed that Annie told him that she and LJ sneaked into her house to have sex. As per him, Annie wanted Christopher to take the blame, as LJ was 17 years old, and this could have gotten him into legal trouble for getting a minor pregnant. Chris had agreed to help her. When the officer inquired him about how many times he and Annie had indulged in sex, he said that it was only once, which happened at Spencer's house last week. Surprising how what happened was just around the time of the tragic incident. At this stage of the questioning session, Christopher volunteered to give the officer more information about what had happened at Spencer's party. The recording from this session revealed him behaving as if he had something to hide, over-explaining aspects that weren't even asked about.
Also, like when Spencer started dozing off, she had got a bloody nose, and it dripped on the shoe, and then she ran into the bathroom.
Just like the culprits who call the police themselves to escape from the radar of suspicion, Christopher seemed to use this classic technique to explain how he got Annie's blood on his shoe. Christopher had his answers ready for the officer, who next tried to find out where he was on 10th of March 2012, during the time Annie's murder was suspected to occur.
Tell us about what happened to your grandma.
Well, I didn't stay in my grandma's prison. I went there, put my stuff there, and I asked her if I can go see if a friend hung out, because I didn't really want to stay there. She's kind of funny, no offense. But I went to my friend's, I knocked on his door, he didn't answer, so I went straight back to my grandma. Got a movie, and me and my grandma watched movies.
The next step in the investigation was to get a search warrant for Spencer Crittle's house, as he could provide details about the two incidents Christopher had talked about in his interrogation. Number 1, blood on the shoe. Number 2, LJ, Annie's other boyfriend. While interrogating Spencer, he confirmed the nosebleed incident. He also revealed how everyone warned Annie to stay away from LJ, as he appeared to be a part of some gang. There was a very similar pattern between the narratives of Christopher and Spencer. With LJ now a prime suspect, the police hit a dead end, trying to track him down. Since none of Annie's friends had met him in person, the police were unable to draw on the physical description of a 17-year-old with alleged involvement in a gang. About a week later of the incident, an extensive investigation with no real clue about the culprit, Joanna Franklin walked into a nearby police station, claiming to have witnessed the brutal murder of 15-year-old Annie Kasprzak. As per reports, Joanna had herself confessed to being a heavy drug user. Alleged to be involved in credit card fraud, she demanded to reveal the details in exchange for police agreeing to drop all the charges against her for her illegal activities. The investigators, desperate for any lead, overlooked a crucial detail: how reliable any information could be from a woman who was using the death of a minor as a bargaining chip. When asked about the killer, she named her associate, Daniel Robert Ferry, as the man behind the murder of Annie. Given Daniel's rap sheet and violent criminal history, this accusation put him right at the top of the suspect list. As per Joanna Franklin's account of events, Daniel Robert Ferry made sexual advances toward Annie, and when she refused, he exerted force on her, grabbed her head from behind, and threw her face against the wall. She further said that Ferry kicked her to make her fall on the ground, and then put her in an SUV with the help of some friends. Annie was still alive and breathing when they decided to go up to the canyon. As per Joanna, Ferry and his friends had an excuse ready when they came back. She heard them say Annie had gone swimming or something like that. With this new lead, the search for Annie's killer intensified, as investigators felt the weight of uncovering the truth behind this brutal crime as soon as possible. In another bombshell revelation, Joanna confessed that she knew LJ, the mysterious boyfriend who had remained a mystery throughout the investigation.
She came inside with LJ. I went to go, I was going to hit a van, so we went to go like find my marble in my bed. And I came back out and we could hear him having in the bathroom.
Who?
LJ and a girl. And I go, are you serious? And he goes, what? And I go, that's statutory rape. And he goes, you're not doing it? And I'm like, I'm not okay with that. And I started like freaking out, and then she came out and she's like, you can't do that. Like she was upset, and then they came out and they're like, sorry, and she was like, and I was like, you guys need to go. And that's when I said, hey, how about my turn? She goes, what? And she started laughing, and I grabbed her face.
So, according to Joanna, LJ was involved as an accomplice in the crime alongside Ferry. She revealed how they brutally assaulted Annie after she laughed at their advances, and it was Ferry who had ultimately put an end to her life. Joanna appeared quite non-serious and animated while narrating the incident. Her exaggerated style of storytelling and obvious loopholes in the story raised doubts about her reliability. The pressured speech suggested possible substance use and mental health issues. What further raised concerns was her repetitive use of "that girl" instead of Annie's name. As officers found some suspicious DNA at Ferry's house, no direct link was found between him and Annie. He had a solid alibi because he was busy committing a different crime at the exact time Annie was killed. The investigation took a shocking turn when it became clear that Joanna had deceived the police, exploiting the murder mystery to frame her drug dealer. Ferry claimed that Joanna got angry when he stopped supplying heroin to her. She made up the whole story to free herself from charges and get revenge on Ferry. In late 2012, Daniel Ferry was handed a 15-year sentence following a plea deal for crimes committed around the time of Annie's murder. These charges included kidnapping, attempted drug possession with intent, and drug distribution. After struggling with a misdirected investigation, the police finally uncovered the true culprit behind this twisted case. It was Christopher Bagshaw, Annie's 15-year-old boyfriend, who had planned the murder so well that he stayed away from the radar of suspicion for 2 years. Annie's family's initial portrayal of her as a runaway had helped Christopher shift the attention away from him. It turned out that the nosebleed incident was a lie, and Christopher used his friend Spencer Criddle to back up the story. Christopher's sudden entry into the investigation was an effort to dodge the investigators. LJ was an imaginary character that Annie had created to make Christopher jealous. Christopher's grandma, Wilma Backley, and his father were also involved in protecting Christopher from the police. They falsely claimed that he had been at his grandmother's house all night. However, his grandma's call history revealed that several calls were made to Chris when he was supposed to be at home. A major detail that the investigators had initially thought was impossible to find was the exact location of Annie and Christopher. The moment they finally decoded the cell phone activity, it wasn't difficult to discover the lies Christopher had been hiding behind. Their cell phones showed rapid pings because they were at the same location, and due to poor signals, the cell phones were trying to connect with multiple towers. The police then rechecked the public tips they had previously received about a teenager who was spotted near the river bridge at the time of the incident. In October 2014, the long-awaited breakthrough arrived when Chris Bagshaw was taken into custody in Colorado. While at the juvenile detention center, Chris revealed the disturbing details to an inmate, which led to him being charged with first-degree murder and obstruction of justice. By faking a romantic gesture, Chris had lured Annie to the riverside with a plan set to assault her to death brutally. The motive behind this shocking crime was rooted in Chris's fear that Annie was pregnant with his child. His irrational thought process led him to think that killing Annie would easily erase the problem of the non-existent pregnancy. On April 25, 2016, Christopher Bagshaw pleaded as guilty and was sentenced to 15 years in prison for the murder of Annie Kasprzak. While he committed the crime as a minor, he was charged as an adult and will be eligible for parole in 2034.